All right, good morning, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good morning, doctor. You look different.
How do I look different? Is this no formal shirt today? It's Friday, so it's casual Friday, right? I forgot my tie. Yeah, well, no. Should I really wear a tie at home? Probably not useful, right? We are among friends. Probably my hair looks shorter today. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Iman. Okay, welcome to this final session um, on essay writing. Uh, we have already covered quite a lot of content. We've talked about the assessment objectives, the most common mistakes, how to make a point, how to evaluate, how to plan and structure an essay, the format, the diagrams. What else? The use of transitional words and phrases, how to implement student peer reviewing, how to give feedback, how to support non-native English speakers. So yeah, it's been 4 very busy days, but I truly hope that the content that we have discussed together was helpful to you, and that eventually it will be useful to your students. So now today, the only thing that we have to do as a conclusion, so today is essentially a conclusion to this series of workshop, is simply to have a look at some work that has been written by your students, and to discuss it together. Okay, so again, this is hopefully all of you guys, you can be as active as possible to participate, to give your opinion on each piece of work that we are going to analyze together. And essentially, for each piece of work, what we can do, I will give everyone some time to go through the work and simply to identify what we think is good about this essay, what we think can be improved. So both in terms of content and in terms of writing skills, and basically what feedback we would give to that particular student. What could we tell that particular student to write better essays in the future? Okay, I'm not very much interested in finding out what grade or what score we would give to that student. What really matters is what feedback we should give. All right. So as I told you earlier, you should be able. Let me share my screen. You should be able to find those samples on the website. Okay, so if you go to the resource section, and if you scroll down, boop, 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 you will find this last workshop. So sample 0 to sample 4, these are this is a selection of work from your students. So I selected some samples among everything that was sent to me this week. And you see there is an archive here, additional examples of candidate responses. These are some samples from my students that I have selected. So if we have some time left, we will be able to have a look at these additional samples, but I think it's much better if we start with what you sent me. So we'll go from sample 0 to sample 4, and depending on whether we have time or not, we will see if we can do a bit more. Okay, so I suggest we start with sample 0. I named it 0 because it is quite short, so that can be a good introduction. It's AS, if I remember well. Let me open it. Let me just go back there. Sample 0. All right, so you should have that. So the essay question is not. Let me close my WeChat. The essay question is not written, but I'm going to share it with you. So can you all download these sample 0. I'm also going to share it on the chat box. So if you can't access it, then you will be able to download it directly from the chat box. So let me find it. Okay, I'm going to share everything. Okay, I'm going to share all samples. Oh, I can't. Apparently, I can only open one file at a time. Okay, so this is sample 0. This is sample 1. This is, so if you look at the chat box now, you will have all 4 samples. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and the last one. But of course, you can also download those samples directly from the website. Okay, you should have them so on the chat box and on the website. Okay, so let's have a look. Do you all have sample 0? Is it okay? Can you all download it or open it? This is the document you should have. Okay, so it's quite short, so that's why we can start with this one. So again, as I mentioned, the essay question is not written. So the essay question, I'm going to share my my screen because we can see it here. It's the title of this document. So the essay question, so this was an 8-mark essay question. So essentially explain the meaning of the term equilibrium price and quantity in the market for a good or service, and show how a new equilibrium is established when there is an increase in demand. So that was the essay question. Okay, so I repeat, explain what is meant by the concept of equilibrium price in a market, equilibrium in the market, and essentially explain how we're going to move from one initial equilibrium to the other when there is an increase in demand. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, I'm going to leave everyone not so long because you see this essay is quite short. This is only part A. There is just a short paragraph. So let's have a quick look at the work of this student. And then what I would like you to do is to tell me what you think is good in this essay, what you think should be improved. Is there any content missing? Is there any content off topic? Is there any explanation that lacks clarity? Is there any example that is either not relevant or missing? How about the diagram? You see there is a diagram here. Is this a good use of a diagram? So the format, because it is typed on the computer, we will not have much to say, but all right, basically everything, all the feedback that you would give to that particular student. So I'm going to give you just 3 or 4 minutes because it's relatively short, and then we can brainstorm and share our opinion or our perception of that student's work. Okay, do you have any question before we start? Is it okay? Does anybody have a problem to open the document? So remember, the essay question is essentially explain what is meant by the concept of a market equilibrium and explain how we will move to the initial equilibrium to the final equilibrium when there is an increase in demand. Okay, that is the essay question. This is an AS essay question. I think it is from 2014. I'm not sure, but I believe. And it was an 8-mark question. Okay, so what time is it? It is 9:41. So let's just at 9:45, that should be enough. 4 minutes to have a look at that. You can take a few notes if you want, and just identify what you like about this work, what you think could be improved, and what feedback would you give to this student. Okay, we'll meet again. It will start in 4 minutes. Okay, 4 minutes should be more than enough to go through this work. 4 minutes, everyone. The question I repeated several times. It is, what is meant by the concept of market equilibrium, and explain how we will essentially move from the initial equilibrium to the final equilibrium when there is an increase in demand. Okay, let me try to find the exact question. explain the meaning of the term equilibrium price and quantity in the market for a good or service, and show how a new equilibrium is established when there is an increase in demand. This is 8-mark question, summer 2014, paper 2, version 2. Okay, 4 minutes should be enough. We'll start in 4 minutes. Okay, 1 more minute should be enough to prepare some feedback, so then we can exchange our thoughts about this work. 1 more minute. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready to share a few ideas on this work? Would anyone would like to take the lead on that and just analyze this work for us?
Yeah. Professor, first of all, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I spotted some punctuation like issues.
Okay.
And then, there's a total opposite to what he's saying and what he's depicting in the diagram. I mean, the total confusion about right and left. Here, he says that if the demand rises, the demand curve shifts to the left, which is, you see. So if you see in the diagram, yeah, exactly. In the diagram, the demand is actually shifting towards the right, which is a right thing. So the demand, so the diagram is right, but the write-up is not good. And yeah, but for the 8 marks essay, I don't think that it is sufficient. And his explanation is not like worthy to get him, good marks. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, thank you very much, Shoaib. You've identified one mistake here. Obviously, the demand shifts rightward, not leftward. Yes, the demand rises. Okay, this is what the student has indicated there. So an increase or rise in demand is represented by a rightward shift, definitely not by a leftward shift. And the diagram accurately shows a rightward shift. Okay. What
And the second mistake,
Go ahead.
Professor, sorry to cut you. The second mistake is in the third line. Market clear, then full stop. I mean, it should be market clearing equilibrium quantity. So there is also a confusion here in the third line start. Yeah.
I think it's fine just to say when the market clears. Well, okay, there is an S missing. Yes, when the market clears, that's it. So it's the verb to clear, which means that when the market clear, it means there is no shortage, there is no surplus, no excess supply, no excess demand. So it's actually correct. So I don't have a problem with this. Yeah, you said punctuation. Yes, it's a detail, but it's true that there should be spaces after at the beginning of each sentence. It's a minor detail, but there are some conventions about how to use punctuation. After a comma, after a dot, there should be a space. This is a minor detail, but again, for the quality of the presentation, this is something that is easy to fix and that just looks better. Okay, who else would like to add a few comments about this work? So in the chat box, I saw the definition for shortage is, well, basically that student has inverted shortage and surplus. Yes, absolutely. You see, a shortage is the situation that results when the quantity supplied of a product exceeds quantity demanded. Well, that's actually a surplus. And well, so basically these two definitions here, definition of a shortage and definition of a surplus, have been inverted. And that's a pretty big problem in terms of knowledge and understanding. That really shows that the student is not very confident and not familiar with something as fundamental as a shortage and surplus. Okay, that's of course at the core of the essay question, and there is a major mistake, a major misunderstanding. So that's something that's going to definitely take the grade way down. What else? So yeah, that's a big problem. Rajendra, you said lengthy writing. Okay, could perhaps be a bit more concise. Missing no tendency to change. Well, yes, when you define equilibrium, why not? But of course, there are several possible definitions of equilibrium. Application correct diagram, but missing explanation for why price and quantity rise. Yes, I agree with you. This is probably the biggest thing that is missing, or the most important thing that is missing in this essay. Yes, you have a diagram that is used, which a diagram that is relevant. There are many things that are good about this diagram. Everything has been labeled properly. The axes, the curves, the values on the horizontal and vertical axis. There is an arrow to change to show the shift in demand. You could even add one arrow here and another one there, just to emphasize the direction of the change in price and quantity. Okay, so the diagram is not bad. Of course, what I don't like about that diagram is that the student has not used a ruler. Okay, so the presentation, that makes the presentation a bit yeah, and doesn't look extremely nice. There should be again, there is one single diagram, so it's fine if you don't have a number, but I think as a good habit, it's always important to me, at least, to give a number and even perhaps a title. So you see that this diagram neither have a number nor a title, but overall this diagram is not bad. But yeah, I agree with you, Rajendra. There is no explanation. There is no comment of this diagram to explain essentially what happens. The student just say, okay, the demand will the demand shifts will increase, and then okay, so the ultimate consequence, the equilibrium price and the quantity will both increase. Okay, which is correct, yes, but there is no explanation. So one assessment objective is analysis, and to me there is no analysis here, okay, or very superficial at least, because it goes directly from the initial cost to the final consequence. Instead, we should really explain step by step what is the process, why will the price rise eventually. And yes, I think someone else mentioned this in the chat box. Yes, Angela, you mentioned it, the market forces. I do believe that it would be important to talk about the market forces and to explain essentially that, okay, initially the price is P1, okay, so if after the increase in demand, this will create an excess demand, okay, at P1 there will now be an excess demand, and therefore to explain that when the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, buyers will have an incentive to offer a higher price so they can get the product. And on the other hand, suppliers have an incentive to increase the price because, again, they see that there are more buyers than the quantity that they are willing and able to sell at that price. So both buyers and sellers have an incentive to raise the price. So the price will increase. And then you could even talk about the functions of the price mechanism. As the price rises, businesses have an incentive to sell more output. That is the incentive function of the price mechanism. As the price rises, buyers will purchase, the quantity demanded will fall. This is the rationing function of the price mechanism. Higher price means more rationing. Okay, rationing means limitation. Okay, so if the price is higher, you have more incentive to produce for producers, and more rationing, so a lower quantity demanded. And of course, if you want to talk about the signaling function of the price mechanism, you can simply say that a higher price simply sends an information to sellers. The information that sellers receive is that, oh, now this product has become more valuable, and the consequence is the incentive function of the price mechanism. Therefore, we should produce more. And when the price rises, buyers receive another message, another information. Oh, this product becomes more costly. Okay, that's it. That's the signaling function of the price mechanism, an information that is sent to economic agents, more valuable for sellers, more costly for consumers. And the consequence is the incentive function of the price mechanism for sellers and the rationing function of the price mechanism for buyers. So yeah, I think this entire process is what had to be analyzed to explain that initially we have a shortage, buyers and sellers have an incentive to offer or raise the price of the product, and at the end of the day, the market forces of supply and demand, the price mechanism, and it would have been a great idea to talk about the functions of the price mechanism to explain why we will, or how we will converge towards the new equilibrium B, so the functions of the price mechanism, to explain the process, and to of course start from the idea that, okay, at P1 when the demand is D prime, then we have a shortage. So I think this is something that should have been explained. So yeah, the market forces. market forces to really explain the process. Otherwise, it's there is not much of an analysis in this answer. Okay. So yeah, no links between the diagram. Angela, you say that no links between the definition and the diagram. So yes, we have a diagram, but there is no there is a brief comment. Just say that okay, the price will increase from P1 to P2 or from Q1 to Q2. So it's actually pretty good that the student has used some letters or some points in the diagram, from the diagram in the explanation. It's a good practice, but the problem here is that there is not much of an explanation. It's, to me, it looks quite superficial in terms of analysis. All right, let's see. Anton, you are saying ideally a surplus is too much supply compared to demand. Equilibrium as the quantity and price where there is no tendency to change. Yes, in this case where supply and demand for the product are equal. The diagram is good. Yes, I agree that overall it's not bad. And the last lines, expect for left and right is bad also, although it should be said which diagram. And Rajendra, you say, I think we don't need to go into detail like this for 8-mark questions. Well, I agree that it's a bit difficult to know whether or not this was expected, because if the essay question was, and show how, let me just find the precise wording again. The essay question, if we read it carefully, was, and show how a new equilibrium is established when there is an increase in demand. All right. So yeah, it's not like analyze or describe the process through which we will reach to the new equilibrium. But the reason for which if I were a student, I would still do it. I would still talk about the function of the price mechanism. I would explain the process, because simply there is not much, if we don't do it, if we just do as like this student, if we just show the diagram and say, okay, that's how we move from equilibrium A to equilibrium B, well, you see that the answer is quite short. And as a student, I would be afraid of not being able to reach full mark for this particular essay question, because okay, you define what is the market equilibrium, and okay, you may define shortage and surplus, so that would be a good way to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. All right. But then if you just show this diagram and if you just draw this diagram and say, okay, so of course, if demand increases, we move from A to B, price increases, quantity increases. I feel like you don't demonstrate much analysis, or quite superficial. So I would still talk about, I would still give more information about the process and more details about the process through which we move from A to B. But I agree with Jendra. I would keep it short. All right, I would not spend like 2 pages to explain in detail how the process works, but in a few sentences I would explain that, okay, now that the demand has increased, there is a shortage at P1, buyers and sellers are encouraged to raise the price of the product. The higher price will encourage sellers to supply more. That's the incentive function of the price mechanism. The higher price will reduce the quantity demanded. That's the rationing function of the price mechanism. And overall, the combination of those market forces will lead to equilibrium B. Something like that. You know, it's not extremely detailed, but at least it's a good analysis that makes reference to the price mechanism and to the various functions of the price mechanism. Okay. Something else that I think is missing in this essay, I would have appreciated, because this essay question is really about what happens in a market. You see that there is no definition of demand, there is no definition of supply. Well, there is no definition of market. Why not? It might not be necessary, but again, if I had to write the essay myself, I would probably start with a definition of market. I would a brief definition. Okay, a market is a place where buyers and sellers meet to trade goods and services. Then I would probably give a brief definition of demand and supply, perhaps just I would probably just combine them because they are very similar. You just have to replace buyers by sellers, quantity demanded by quantity supplied. So rather than writing two full definitions, I would probably just combine the two into a single sentences. Again, just to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. I think this is also something that could be added to demonstrate that as a student, I know I know these concepts pretty well. Okay, does anybody else want to add something about this work? Feel free to do so. So overall, I don't think this is a very good work. There is a major mistake about the surplus and shortage. There is a mistake here about the direction of the shift. I think the analysis is too superficial. I would have appreciated to receive more information about the process through which we move from A to B. And I would have also appreciated to have a definition of market demand and supply. Well, I don't know, out of 8, I would probably, again, that's not really the focus of today's session, how much grade, what mark I would give. But for something like that, well, 3 or 4. Yeah, out of 8. Depending on my mood, depending on whether I had lunch before or not. It's not very good to me. 5 is, to me, it's way too generous. I really find this way too generous. There are too many serious mistakes. So yeah, to me, 4 is really the highest possible grade that I would be willing to give to that student. Does anybody else want to add something about this piece of work? Are we good? All right, let's move on. Are we ready to focus on sample 1? Sample 1. Okay, let me open it. Can you guys see when I guess you do. Can you guys see when I write on these sample? Because I've never actually really tried to have a Zoom session with when using the stylus of my tablet, but you should be able to see when I write on it, right?
Yes. Right. There's no problem.
Okay, very well. Okay, now sample number 2. So this one is longer. Well, first, we see it looks pretty good. The presentation is quite attractive. So that's already something that I would regard as a good signal. It's not always reliable, but at least it indicates that whoever wrote this pays attention to the presentation of the work. So that's usually a good sign. Okay, so this is sample 1. You can download it from the website. You can download it from the chat box. So this is an A2 essay question, 13 marks. So this is part B, which means that evaluative comments will be expected here. And the essay question is discuss whether, let me just zoom in a bit, discuss whether it is sometimes necessary to use the public sector to try to achieve economic efficiency rather than the private sector. So my understanding here is that public sector basically means government intervention. Okay, well, basically that, yes, if we in a free market economy, if we only have the private sector, then why it might not always be possible to achieve economic efficiency. So this one is a bit longer, so I'm going to give you a bit more time to read it. And again, you don't have to take very detailed or specific notes. I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes to go through this document. And again, we will brainstorm about what we liked, or you can type in the chat box, or someone can take the lead and just mark or pretend that you are marking this essay and just share your thoughts with everyone. And yeah, in 5 minutes, so it is 10:06, so at, let's say, 10 or it's 10:07, so at 10:12, we can start discussing this second sample. Okay, see you in 5 minutes. Okay, one more minute, everyone, and then we can go through this sample together. And again, you can type your feedback in the chat box, what you think is good about this work, what you think could have been improved. Think in terms of assessment objective, right? Assessment criteria. Think about knowledge and understanding, application analysis, evaluation, because it is a part B 13 mark. So it's a discuss question. So of course, we expect students to evaluate the arguments. So think about all that. Don't really tell me what grade you would give, because that's not really matters here. What matters is what feedback you would give to that particular student. A few more seconds and then we can start. All right, so who would like to start? Who would like to start sharing some ideas on this work to identify what's good about this essay and what could be improved? Would anyone like to take the lead on this piece of work and, well, basically explain to us what feedback you would give to that student?
Yeah, Professor, it was a quite good one, the way the student explained it, and also gave some logical arguments, giving the three cases of one is the public good and then the monopoly, and properly explaining the case with the diagrams. Only I have an issue that the fifth diagram has been drawn first and then it has been explained. So it's a good thing. And also, what further things have been improved. So if I to suggest him that maybe he can include quick headings, at the end when he's explaining about public courts case, monopoly case. Yeah, and then also he has straight away written DWL without writing even once that it's a deadweight loss. But it's a very small mistake, but still it needs to be done. And yeah, overall, it's a good one. But one thing which if he includes in the diagram, it will make more good, that always the point of intersections, the equilibrium points should be marked like A, B, C, and then in the diagram, so he can explain about those points. And then in the figure 5, the monopoly, the red area has not been marked, that what he wants to say, but the point he wants to make here, right? This red area, it should be marked properly. Yeah, deadweight loss. Just like the figure 4, he has marked it like perfectly. So yeah, overall, it's a perfect, to me, it's a very good, and he has explained it quite good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wei. Thank you so much. Anton was saying in the chat box, good knowledge and understanding. Yes, I agree, but not as much other aspects, especially weaker evaluation or basically no evaluation. Consider when and if always these cases. So yes, we're gonna have a very detailed look at this work to focus on each assessment criteria. And yeah, Rajendra and Anton, you both agree on this, and I agree with you as well. I feel like especially there is not much evaluation going on in this essay. Would anyone like to add anything about this work before we have a very forensic analysis of this work, so we can analyze every sentence and see what's good and what could be improved. Business objectives should be mentioned. Yes, especially Angela, you're right, as an evaluative comment. Because, for example, when you look at a monopoly, yeah, a monopoly will generate a market failure if you assume that the monopolist maximizes profit. Yeah. This might not be the case under other circumstances, or at least the size of the market failure could be smaller if the business does not seek to maximize profit, but has other alternative objectives. So this would be an interesting evaluative comment that could be made from many other comments, of course. Any other comments you want to make before I go through this this essay, and I can, well, give you just an example of how what is the process for me when I mark an essay. Any other comment? Okay, so let's start. Let's go step by step. Okay, and again, I'm going to emphasize what I like and what I think could be better. Okay, so it starts with a definition, economic efficiency, and you have a very good practice because yes, you have the full text version, and then you have the acronym. Okay, and then you see that later in the essay, the student just use EE to avoid repeating himself or herself. So that's a good practice. Okay, is where scarce resources, okay, so it's just tiny mistake, but no big deal, are used in the most efficient way to produce maximum output. So actually, to produce maximum output, I know that this is sometimes a definition that you have in textbooks, but it's actually not a good definition of economic efficiency. Because if you consider that using the resources in the most efficient way is simply about producing the maximum output, that's productive efficiency only. Okay, you don't have an allocative efficiency at all. So to me, that's not the definition that I give, because for me to produce the maximum output, it's only PE. It's not economic efficiency. Okay, so again, that's not really the students or the teacher's responsibility. I just think that there are some textbooks that do not accurately define economic efficiency, but I really advise students not to use this definition because it is too narrow. It completely overlooks allocative efficiency. All right. So then economic efficiency includes productive efficiency and allocative efficiency. You see, something else that I like so far is that they are very clear, simple sentences and short sentences. One sentence says one thing. It's the way that makes it very easy for us to understand. Okay. All right, but I would have expected the definition of productive efficiency and allocative efficiency to follow. But you see that instead, the student has decided to talk about Pareto. Pareto, and there is here a spelling mistake, which is a big deal because this is a keyword. So again, no big deal if this is not a keyword, but it should really be Pareto, because this is the name of the Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. So that's a problem here. No big deal, of course, but this should be fixed. So in economic efficiency, the social welfare, no clear definition, but again, it's not required to define it, is maximized. Because it is Cambridge, we should use British English, not American English. So maximized in British English is with an S. And it is Pareto efficient. Okay, which is, well, it is impossible, okay, double S, no big deal here, to make someone better off without making someone else worse. Okay, to be honest, I'm not sure whether it is extremely useful to talk about Pareto efficiency. Why not? Okay, it's you could just mention it briefly, but what usually matters really is allocative and productive efficiency. Okay, I don't know, why not? we could define Pareto efficiency. But I would have expected to have the definition of productive efficiency and allocative efficiency as soon as these two keywords are mentioned, okay? Because otherwise we can't really understand what it means. Economic efficiency includes productive and allocative efficiency. Okay, what is it? We want the answer now, not later in the essay. Okay, now what do we have? The productive efficiency in a firm. So it's very good that the student has distinguished between productive efficiency in the firm and in the economy, okay? Is producing at the lowest possible cost. This is not extremely clear because what type of cost are we talking about? Is this the lowest possible total cost? Is this the lowest possible marginal cost? Of course, instead, we should say the lowest possible per unit cost or average total cost, right? Because this is what we are talking about here. Lowest possible average, the lowest possible average total cost. So make sure you are as precise as possible when talking about cost, benefits, revenue, utility, could be total, average, marginal. So we have to be precise. The diagram looks pretty good. Everything is labeled. Yeah, the diagram looks good. I just don't understand what this diagram was meant for. There is a number, there is a title, so that's the way I like it. Everything is labeled properly here. Okay, and there is, below the diagram, there is a short comment, so that's good in figure 1. In figure 1, when the quantity is at QPE and the price at PPE, it is at average total cost ATC, lowest point. Okay, at this time, the productive in the firm is achieved. Okay, it's not super clear. Okay, the productive efficiency in a firm is achieved. Okay, that's not bad for productive efficiency in a firm. All right, then we move to productive efficiency in an economy. Is when it is impossible to produce more of the goods, or one good, perhaps more of one good, without producing less of another. Okay. What did I tell you yesterday? One diagram that students always forget to label: the PPC. There is no label here. There should be PPC. A PPC is a curve like any other curve, and therefore it must be defined. Okay. So, okay, then we have, apart from that labeling mistake, the diagram looks good. There is again a number and there is a title. Again, this would be in an economy, not economic. And again, there is a short comment below it, so that's good. In figure 2, we have a PPC, okay, but you see it's not labeled on the diagram. And again, there is a pretty big issue here. You see that the PPC is not translated properly. Production possibility, not possible. Production, it's a keyword, so it should be spelled properly. Possibility. Production possibility. Curve. Okay, PPC. When the point, well, it's a bit vague, but okay, when the point is within the curve or below, okay, below the curve at B, it doesn't achieve allocative efficiency. Okay, so here we clearly have a mistake because the student is not talking about allocative efficiency, but is talking about productive efficiency. So that's a problem. It is a bit vague. What is it? Instead, we should write something like the economy, right? Because we look at productive efficiency in the economy here. It does not achieve productive efficiency when the point is or lies on the PPC, like point A. It's the same thing. We should say the economy achieves productive efficiency. Okay, so we don't need this then. At this time, it is Pareto efficient. No, actually, this is incorrect because if you want to have Pareto efficiency, you need both productive and allocative efficiency. So no, need both PE and AE. So you don't know if you have a point, if you have point A here, for example, okay, it is productively efficient. but we don't know if it is allocatively efficient. So there is no way for you to know whether or not you achieve a Pareto efficiency. Okay, so you see that there are already quite a few things that could be improved in this essay so far, and we only looked at the introduction on efficiency. Okay, let's continue. So this is really how I do it, and that's usually the type of feedback that I would give. So of course, it depends on the ability of the student. If the student is weaker, I would mostly focus on the key things that can be improved. Such a detailed feedback would be given to higher ability students who well, should focus on every single detail. Okay, let's move on and let's talk about allocative efficiency. Allocative efficiency is where price is equal to marginal cost. All right. Again, I know that this is a common definition that we have in textbooks. It's fine if your students define it like this. I just don't like it very much. Instead, I think it's much clearer to talk about the marginal cost of production and the marginal benefit of consumption. So essentially, I usually say that allocative efficiency is achieved at a quantity, let's say QAE, such that the marginal social cost of production is equal to the marginal social benefit of consumption. It is much, to me, clearer than saying price is equal to marginal cost. And yeah, it can be quite confusing actually, because if you define it this way, we don't really understand that what we mean by price, it's not the equilibrium price, it's actually the demand price. So that's why I don't really like this definition. To me, it's better to use marginal social cost, marginal social benefit, especially in A2. Students know the difference between social, private costs, so it's much more clear. Okay, sorry, I'm struggling to use my tablet. So, okay, AE is where price is equal to marginal cost. Firms are producing those goods and services most wanted by consumers. So again, it is actually not a very good definition of allocative efficiency, because of course, allocative efficiency is about producing, it takes into account what people want, okay? It does take into account consumer preferences, yes, let me write it. It does take into account consumer preferences, yes. If we produce something that nobody wants, it's not going to be allocatively efficient. But it, of course, it also takes into account the cost of production. Okay. So if there is a product that everybody wants so much, but if it's incredibly costly to produce, we are not going to allocate a lot of resources to produce this good. Okay, so that's why I don't like this definition very much, because it seems like we only take into account what people want. We would only take into account the benefit of consumption. Okay, it's one aspect, but also we have to take into account the cost of production. So I don't really like this definition. Instead, I just say AE is, yes, when the marginal social cost is equal to the marginal social benefit. And therefore, when this is achieved, we maximize social welfare, we maximize total surplus. That's it. That makes way more sense than just focusing on what people want. All right, so then, yes, below, it means when marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost. So it should mention the marginal benefit of consumption is equal to the marginal cost of production. Yes, if you want to be even more precise, you can add marginal social benefit and marginal social cost. In my PPT, I just write MB, MC because we have not yet introduced externalities. But once students have studied externalities, they should understand that this is really the social cost and social benefit that we are talking about. Then allocative efficiency is achieved. The student could have even replaced by AE because this acronym has been defined. Okay, so then we have this diagram that illustrates allocative efficiency. So it's a nice diagram. There is a number, there is a title, everything is labeled. Again, we could even add MSB, MSC. What I would have added is I would have even shaded the total surplus. Okay, and just say that, okay, that's the maximum total surplus. You can't get a higher total surplus. And you know that in my diagram, in my PPT, I use the following representation. So sorry, because I think I'm going to try to draw the diagram that I use, but it's going to look pretty bad, I think. Let me try to do it as clearly as possible. I use this type of representation where I have two diagrams. So I have the quantity. Here I have the cost and benefit. And here I have total surplus. So I have, okay, the marginal social cost, the marginal social benefit. I'm sorry, it looks terrible. And I like to do something like this. Zoop. All right, sorry, I did my best. Just to show that, all right, this is at that level of output, QAE, where the marginal social cost is equal to the marginal social benefit, that you maximize total surplus, and therefore there is no dead weight loss. So I like this type of representation to illustrate allocative efficiency. So we could simply add one diagram below this one. Okay. But that's pretty good on allocative efficiency. So in figure 3, okay, there is maximize, so same thing, try to use British English, total surplus, okay, but there is no definition of total surplus. So it could be just the sum of producer surplus and consumer surplus. Then, all right, no need to define consumer surplus and producer surplus because this would be too long. And no dead weight loss, okay, so same thing, perhaps a very brief definition would help, just in a few words, doesn't have to be a very long definition. A loss in total surplus caused by a market failure or something like that. It means that when the point at QAE and PAE, okay, not bad. A bit redundant. This sentence here is not very useful, right? It's a bit redundant, a bit repetitive. So I think we could get rid of that sentence to save time. All right, so that's the introduction that demonstrates pretty good knowledge and understanding of efficiency, allocative, productive in a firm. So that's not bad. You see, there is a lot of things that I wrote, but overall, it's pretty good. There are many things that can be improved, but that's not bad. Okay. In market failure, which is said to exist when the free market fails to deliver an efficient allocation of the resources, okay, it's a good definition of the market failure. It needs government sector to achieve EE. Okay, so I'm not very happy with this sentence because it's not really that it needs. What instead we could say is that government, yeah, my G's are a bit weird, sorry. A government intervention may, because it's not always the case, you know about government failure, and this is a good evaluative comment that could be made, could improve resource allocation, okay, and we improve efficiency, if you will. We improve the efficiency of resource allocation, rather than it needs government sector to achieve economic efficiency. That's not really the case. Okay, market failure includes externalities. Again, there is another spelling mistake on an important keyword, monopoly, no, monopoly. So that's not okay to make spelling mistakes on keywords. Rather than includes, I would say, because here the student is listing the different possible causes, right? So I would say market failure can be caused by externalities, blah, 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 okay? Rather than just includes, to be more specific. Okay, so that's pretty good. We have a good definition of market failure. They are, and public, sorry, you see there is a word missing here. I guess the student is, sorry, it's a bit slow to load. I guess the student wants to talk about public goods. Okay, you see that apparently there is no mention of merit and demerit goods, especially if we consider that merit and demerit goods are about information failure. And monopoly power, generally speaking, rather than just focusing on monopoly power, we should say market powers, because it could be a monopoly, it could be an oligopoly, it could be a monopolistic competition, it could be a monopsony. Apart from perfect competition, there is always some market power either on the demand side or on the supply side. Let me save the comments that I wrote. Okay, so you see that you understand why I told you that marking an essay takes a lot of time because yes, I do that in a forensic way, and yeah, so it takes time. Okay, let's have a look at externalities. In externality, okay, I don't really understand why this the student has used in at the beginning of the sentence. All right, but it's no big deal. So in externality, where the action of producers or consumers give rise to side effects on third parties who are not involved in the action. Okay, so it's a relatively good definition. Could be, we could add positive or negative side effects, so replaced by a cost or a benefit, but overall this is a relatively good definition. It will not achieve economic efficiency. So you see here, again, I don't really like the it. What does it refer to? What is it? Is this the market? Is it, okay, so perhaps we can replace by a free market. Will not achieve economic efficiency. All right. And actually, we mostly talk about AE, right? When we look at externality, we talk about the deadweight law. So it's not really about economic efficiency. We can simply say that the market will fail, okay? Rather than referring to economic efficiency, we can just say that the market will not allocate, for allocative efficiency, the right quantity of resources to the production of that good or service. Okay, I really don't understand why the student always starts the sentences by in. That's a bit weird. In the case of negative externalities, for example. So what do we have? In negative externality of production, there are negative externality. Okay, it's a bit repetitive here, which is marginal social cost. So repetitive. Marginal social cost in a market. I don't understand the meaning of that sentence. You see, there are negative externalities, which is marginal social cost. No, is this external cost perhaps? I think the student means the external cost, not the social cost, because there is always a social cost, even if there is no externality. So, and there is no definition. There is no definition of what we mean by a social cost. Remember that a good essay is such that someone who doesn't know much about economics should be able to understand it. A marginal social cost, there is no way anybody can understand. And you see, there is no definition of the acronym. So there should be MSC. So then when we use MSC in the diagram, we know what we are talking about. So the private sector only considers their private cost. Okay, it's true. And benefits, actually. Private cost and benefits, but it's true that now we focus on negative externality, so we can put the emphasis on cost without social cost. No, without external cost. So you see that indicates that the student is confused between social and external, which is a big, pretty big mistake in terms of knowledge and understanding. So negative externality of production will have marginal external cost and deadweight loss. So again, there is no clear definition of what we call a marginal external cost and deadweight loss. Okay, but there is not much of an explanation here. And you see that, okay, that the following sentence is a very good example of a bad example. The production of a factory has negative externalities of production. Okay, it's most likely true, but okay, oh, sorry, it's there. Okay, let me just continue a bit more then. In the production of the factory, it will have or generate air pollution when producing. It is a negative externality of production, and the gap between the marginal social cost and marginal private cost is called the marginal external cost. So you see, the problem we have in this paragraph, to me, is that it's not very concise, it's a bit disorganized, and it's a bit repetitive. Again, the student talks about MSC, about MPC, MEC. I think it could be more concise. I think it could be shorter while remaining quite effective. Yes, and the example that we have here, production of a factory. Okay, so the student tries to elaborate a bit and say, okay, we'll generate some air pollution. All right, so why is it going to, what is the cost on third parties? It would be important to be more specific. What is the cost on third parties? Okay, you could say something like, so local rivers could be polluted and the population is can develop some sicknesses, some diseases, or they can have respiratory issues if they breathe polluted air. If you use an example, you got to be specific, and you see this example is not very specific. Okay, we have a factory that pollutes, but that still is very general air pollution. Okay, why not? But what is going to be the cost, the possible costs on third parties, if you want this example to be convincing, and if you want it to be specific? Just saying that firms pollute, okay, but it's not specific enough, at least not in my opinion. So then we have the diagram, which again is a good diagram. It's fine. I would add that the marginal private cost is the supply curve, that here it's the demand curve. But you see that okay, yes, there is a comment of the diagram. I think the structure of this paragraph could be improved. I would have moved the example before the diagram, or just here. And the explanation, the private sector only considers the private cost. I would move it after the diagram to support the explanation, or to explain the diagram. So I think the structure could be improved a bit. Okay. So now let's have a look at the explanation, which starts here. Okay. Okay. It, again, we have a problem where the it is not clear. It. So that's really a bad practice that makes it quite hard to understand what the student is talking about. It also can be written MSC is equal to MPC plus MEC. Okay, so it's a good relationship between social cost, private cost, and external cost. In figure 4, when there is only the private sector in the market, okay, so when there is no government intervention, why not? The quantity of production will be at Q1. It's a pretty good comment so far. It refers to the diagram clearly with a number, with some points that have been defined on the diagram, so it's good. Because of the MEC, the allocative efficiency will be achieved at QE. Okay, very good. When MSC is equal to MSB. At this time, not clear. It will have what? Same thing. What is it? It will have a deadweight loss. So you see, we should move that sentence here. Okay, when we are at Q1, because it is at Q1 that there is a deadweight loss. So this sentence should be moved a bit before, when we are still talking about the quantity that is produced in a free market economy. And then to say, yeah, ideally we should be at QE. Public sector should join the market. So it's not really about joining, it's about intervene, right? Should intervene in the market to fix the allocative efficiency. Why not? Okay. Government or the public sector could, is it CAT? Right? Can set or impose a tax to push the MPC to the MSC. Okay, that's one possible government intervention. It can achieve allocative efficiency in this market when the quantity at, okay. So it's not bad, actually. This paragraph is a pretty good explanation of why the market will fail when there is a negative externality. It precisely refers to the diagram. The explanation is detailed, it's clear, so I'm quite happy with it. There is no diagram that illustrates the impact of a tax, but it's okay because there are so many other things to write in this essay. So obviously we can't write everything or draw every possible diagram. So I would not hold it against the students. So I'm actually quite happy about this explanation, even though I think the structure of this paragraph could be improved. Okay, but you see there is no evaluative comment whatsoever. There is nothing about the possible, especially the student talked about the tax. Well, at that time, it would have been interesting to talk about other possible instruments and about the limitations of these instruments. Apart from a tax, what else can we use, and what can be and just outline the problems that we can use, for example, if we use a tax. Okay, could be an information failure on the part of the government, could be about the elasticity of demand, could be about the political interest. There are many limitations associated with taxation, and it would be interesting as an evaluative comment to talk about that. Okay. All right. The second case is monopoly. Okay, so now monopoly is spelled properly. Very good. Monopoly is one firm in an industry with very high barriers. Okay, another spelling mistake on a keyword. That's a problem, at least to me. Barriers, not berries. Barriers. Okay, barriers to entry. Okay, so one single firm, which we call a monopolist, with very high barriers to entry. It's true. We could even add two things. There are two other characteristics that are missing to describe a monopoly properly. First one, many buyers. Yeah, one seller and many buyers. Second characteristic, no close substitutes. Okay. If we want to define a monopoly market as precisely as possible. Okay, so the firm is price maker. So again, firm is a bit vague. The firm in a monopoly, we call it a monopolist. So why not being precise? The monopolist is price maker. Yes. Okay. Due to the monopoly, which is same thing, monopolist, which is price maker, the allocative and productive efficiency are both not achieved in a free market. Yes. Hopefully there is an explanation, because so far this sentence is just a statement. It is a valid statement. Okay. And now what I am hoping is that there will be an explanation. I hope. Let's first see the diagram. It's actually a very nice diagram. I would add that average revenue is the demand curve. Okay. But apart from that, it's actually very good. It's an excellent diagram. Yeah, it's perfect. Perfect. Very good. Yeah, I have nothing to say about this diagram apart from adding this and perhaps yes to add the deadweight loss. In figure 5, when there is only the private sector, okay, so rather than saying when there is no private sector, when there is no government intervention, the free market, the price will be at P. I don't see P here, right? I think the student has made a mistake. It should be P, not Q. So there is a mistake in the diagram. And the quantity will be at Q. Okay, correct. It has, same thing. What is it? It has a deadweight loss. It should have been identified in the diagram, and the price isn't at the lowest ATC. It doesn't really matter. What we have to look at is do we produce the productively efficient level of output? But okay, what really matters is the quantity. Do we produce output QPE? So yeah, okay. So we do not achieve productive efficiency and we do not achieve allocative efficiency. So yeah, the explanation is supported by the diagram. Perhaps we could have added that this is going to be the equilibrium because the monopolist seeks to maximize profit, and therefore the rule is going to be MC is equal to MR. It's always good to remind the profit maximizing rule, MC is equal to MR, to explain why the free market equilibrium is going to be QP. Okay, but that's actually pretty good. So no allocative efficiency, no productive efficiency. And then government intervention, so public sector can set a maximum price to reduce the price to achieve allocative efficiency, or a quota of pollution to limit the productivity of production, I think, right? I think the student means production, not pollution, because I don't see here why we would talk about pollution. to limit the productivity to achieve PE. Okay, so it's actually quite interesting here. And that's really something that could be discussed, because let's say you introduce a quota, you set the quantity, the government decides that, all right, we are going to produce this quantity. Okay, indeed, this is going to be one way to achieve productive efficiency, all right? But you also see that this is going to make your deadweight loss bigger. All right, you would have this additional deadweight loss. So you would gain productive efficiency because you will now be able to produce at a lower per unit cost, but you would increase the size of the allocative inefficiency, you would reduce total surplus. So, okay, that would actually be a very interesting discussion, again, as an evaluative comment to say, okay, if we introduce a quota, we will gain in productive efficiency, but we will lose in allocative efficiency. And actually, same thing if you introduce a maximum price, because if you introduce a maximum price here, I think this was the idea, then yeah, okay, in that case, we can show that the business is going to achieve allocative efficiency. So total surplus will be, sorry, not this one. And there is actually a mistake here. I mean, there is a mistake that I missed. Do you see the mistake that I missed? This is not QAE. This is QAE. Yeah, I went too fast. This is QAE. So there is a mistake, not this one. So if we want to achieve allocative efficiency, we should set a maximum price here. Okay. In that case, yes, we will achieve allocative efficiency. Total surplus will be indeed maximized, but you see that the average cost of production will rise, will be higher than what it used to be. So again, if we do that, if we introduce a maximum price, this is going to lead to an improvement in allocative efficiency, and actually we would eliminate all deadweight loss, but at the same time, we would increase productive efficiency by forcing the monopolist to produce at a higher average cost. So this argument here is interesting, okay? But what's missing to me is that there is no discussion of the trade-off between productive and allocative efficiency. And this is really what I would have expected, the trade-off between PE and AE if we implement this type of government intervention. There is no clear example. So it would have been interesting to add an example of perhaps one market in which there is a very strong concentration, just for the sake of example, and say, okay, so in this market, for example, prices tend to be high because it is a seller's market. There are just a very few businesses who control the market. So yeah, I think there is not much application. This diagram is mostly there to support the explanation, not to illustrate, not to give an example. There is nothing specific about this particular diagram. And yes, as we mentioned before, there is no evaluation whatsoever. There is nothing about the possible benefits of a monopoly. There is nothing about X inefficiencies, natural monopoly, the fact that, yes, a monopolist might not seek to maximize profit. There are many possible ways in which we can evaluate this paragraph or this argument on the reason for which the market will fail when there is a monopoly. And actually, there is no evaluation. I don't see any evaluation here so far. Relatively good analysis, even though it's a bit superficial, but no evaluation. And finally, the third case is public goods. Okay, so third case, same thing. It's a bit vague. The first, maybe cause of market failure. It's more precise. The third cause of market failure is public goods. Okay, public good is non-rival and non-excludable. It is difficult to charge. Well, it's actually impossible. It's impossible. If it's non-excludable, it is impossible to charge. And easy to have a free ride. Okay, it's not super clear, right? I think, and both impossible to charge and easy to free ride. These both have to do with something being non-excludable, but it's not very, very well explained. Instead, you should say it's impossible to prevent non-payers from consuming the good. And therefore, this encourages consumers to adopt a free riding behavior. Okay, that's much more clear. But you see that there is nothing about something being non-rival. There is no explanation about what does it mean for a good to be non-rival. I would have liked to have like brackets and say, for example, when consumption by one does not reduce availability to others. Okay, something like that, it's enough. Okay, the companies, okay, would be better to say private companies won't provide public goods. Again, it seems like there is a word missing, public goods. Why? Why? You see, there is no explanation here. It's just a statement, but what's important is to explain why private firms won't produce public goods. Because again, there is 0 people free ride, so they don't want to pay. So if they don't want to pay, the demand for public good is 0. If the demand is 0, it means that private firms, they can't essentially collect revenue from selling public goods, so they can't make profit, so they will not be incentivized or encouraged to produce public goods. That's the explanation that is missing. It will lead to allocative inefficiency, and actually, we should mention the keyword under provision. Okay, would be, and even before, I forgot to mention it earlier, but same thing in the case of a monopoly. Here we should compare these two values and say, okay, we have an under provision here. The free market does not produce enough. And same thing before, with here we should compare and call that an over provision. It's good to say that the market will fail, that we'll have allocative inefficiency, but it's better if we say if we have too much or not enough, right? Okay, so, okay, we have an under provision. It's actually what we call a complete market failure. So public goods will be directly provided by the government. Okay, why not? Government will fix this inefficiency. I don't really understand what is the purpose of this sentence. Okay, may fix this inefficiency by providing public goods themselves to achieve allocative efficiency. Yes, why not? But you see, there is another big problem here, is that there is no example of a public good. There is nothing to illustrate what we mean by public good. And there is no discussion of the limitations of government intervention. So again, no evaluation, no discussion of the limitations of intervention. Okay, it's not magic. There are some problems if the government, sorry, I don't have much room left. Okay, there is no discussion of the limitations of government intervention. So then we have a conclusion, but of course this conclusion cannot be good. I haven't yet read it, but I know it's going to be bad because there is no evaluation. So there is no way the student has enough ingredients to write a good conclusion. Okay, let's read it now. At least what is good is like it starts by in conclusion. So I know that we are moving we are ready to write the conclusion. Same thing, it, what is it? I don't know. It will have inefficiency. Is this inefficiency due to market failure, which includes external? Okay, so that is not a conclusion. To me, this conclusion has no value at all. It's just a summary of, say, okay, there are a few things that make the market fail, and we can use some policies to achieve efficiency. That's not a conclusion. It doesn't have any value to me. Absolutely not. Okay, all right. So yeah, that's my forensic analysis of this essay. So to summarize, to give an overall assessment, overall, the knowledge and understanding is pretty good, even though there are some tiny mistakes on external costs. But overall, it's not bad. There are very few examples, and the examples that are used remain quite superficial. No example of public goods. The example that is given about externalities is quite superficial, and no example given in monopoly. So very weak application in my opinion. The analysis overall, it varies. For example, for externalities, I'm actually quite happy with the analysis. For monopoly, I think it's not bad, even though, yeah, we could have talked about the profit maximizing rule, but there is a really nice diagram to support the explanation, so not bad. For public good, on the other hand, the analysis is extremely weak. There is no explanation, no clear explanation about why private firms will not provide public goods. So that's a very weak analysis. But the biggest problem here is that there is just no evaluation at all. No evaluation. So obviously, for a discuss essay, that means that it is impossible for students to reach level 4 marks, no evaluation. So again, if you really want to know what grade I would have given to this essay, because still it's not bad. They are a lot of positive things about the essay, but to me, this essay cannot get more than 7. 7 would be most likely the grade that I would give, 7 or 8 if I'm in a good mood, or 7.5 if I was allowed to award half marks. I would probably give 7.5, but no more than that. Okay, who would like to add something about this sample? Did I miss anything? Well, so of course there is a trade-off for students to write. It should be more than 20 minutes because, yeah, usually part B, yes, is longer than part A. So I think we can go up to 25 minutes to write that. So of course there is a trade-off. Of course, we can't talk about everything. And actually the student has made some smart trade-offs, like, for example, only focusing on one type of externality. Okay, of course, you don't really have time to talk about both positive and negative externalities. Only to talk about one type of market power, that's also acceptable. The student has also decided not talking about merit and demerit goods, and to me that's acceptable. First, because it's part of the AS syllabus, okay, and also because, as you say, we don't have time to write about everything for this type of essay question. There is too much content that could be included, but not enough time to include everything. So yes, choices have to be made. But the problem is that when you make choices, when you have to decide what to sacrifice, still you need to make sure that you demonstrate all 4 assessment objectives. And now you can't just say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice all evaluation. And that is what happens in this essay. So that's why, to me, it's a problem. And as I said about externalities, I think the paragraph on externalities is not very concise. I think it could have been kept shorter. Okay, but yes, I am aware of time constraints, of course. Am I cruel? 7 or 8? Okay, well, tell me. Well, you know, with an essay with absolutely 0 evaluation, I don't really see how you could give much more than that. More than 8. There are mistakes. There is relatively weak analysis on public goods. 8. Maybe I'm cruel. Maybe I have high expectations. But you see, there are quite a few things that can be that can definitely be improved. Yes, I maintain maybe 8. Okay, no more than 8. Okay. Would anyone like to add something about this this sample? And I think we can be tough for this type of essay question because it is very easy. Okay, that's not a difficult essay question. It's very predictable. It always starts with an introduction of efficiency. It always starts with then you consider the different market failures and the possible solutions and limitations. So it's extremely standard. It's not very challenging. So that's also why I think we can have high expectations, because that's also, we have to take into account that for this essay question, most students do very well, which means that if you want to achieve an A, you will need to get really high grade. Okay. So I think for this type of essay question on efficiency, we must have pretty strong, pretty high expectations. Any other feedback that you would like to give before we move on to the third sample? No? Okay. So can you please open sample 2? Which, let's get back to AS. So I have the 2 next samples are actually about the same essay question on the PED. AS. Let me open it. Sample 2. The essay question is, I'll zoom in a bit. Explain how knowledge of the PED for a good can help businesses to assess the impact of price changes upon their total revenue. Do you have this sample open? Are we good? Are we ready to have a look at this work? So same thing, I'm going to give you some time to review the answer. So careful, there are 2 pages. Okay. So make sure you don't overlook anything. So I'm going to give you a bit more than 5 minutes, something like 5 to 7 minutes. We can read this work until 11:15. So we do that until 11:15. Sample 2. And then same thing, we'll just, I'm probably not going to do a forensic analysis as I did for the previous paper, because it would take too long. I just wanted to do it at least once to show you how I approach my students' answers. But I will just share some general advices or general the overall feedback that I would give to this student. So let's have a look at this work. I'm going to give you 7 minutes until 11:15 to read it, identify the main strengths and weaknesses, the feedback that we would give to that student, and then we can share our opinions in 7 minutes. See you at 11:15. Okay, 1 more minute and we will talk about this sample together. Okay, are you done? Have you had enough time to review this this sample? So I think this essay question, so part A, explain how knowledge of the PED for good can help businesses to assess the impact of price changes upon their total revenue. That's a fairly easy essay question. Of course, we define the PED. Then we explain the relation. We define total revenue. We explain that okay, if the demand is elastic, then well, if we decrease the price, TR increases. If we increase the price, TR decreases. We do the same thing when the demand is inelastic. And the last case, we can do it if the demand is unit elastic. We draw a diagram and that's it, essentially. Okay, so it's pretty standard. So who would like to take the lead and analyze this essay for us? Part A. Would anyone like to do it?
Yeah, the first thing which is missing actually, obviously there's the diagram, because had the diagram was there, the explanation would have been more better.
Okay.
The second thing is, yeah, the second thing is, the student has perceived this question as if the definition of price elasticity has been asked. So yeah, but the arguments in favor or in against of this question, that how it can help businesses. So this has not been so much focused, and there's always just I can see that there was a clear rush towards the conclusion without giving the solid examples, as Angela has also mentioned now. So yeah, this was the clear lacking. But the main thing which will become the cause of serious decrease in the marks for this essay is the absence of the diagram. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, of course. Here there was a fairly obvious diagram to use. Again, it's difficult to draw it, but essentially this one, right, where you have this parabola, and okay, you have TR, you have the demand curve, right? And here the demand is unit elastic. Okay, sorry. I told you yesterday that we should not rush when graphing diagrams, and I'm doing exactly what I told you not to do, but please forgive me. It's not easy to do it with my tablet. But yeah, obviously this diagram would have been extremely useful and is missing. So that's definitely a problem. Let me check the chat box, see what you identify. So no definition of total revenue. Of course, this was a keyword that deserved to be defined. And of course, no definition prevents the examiner from assessing knowledge and understanding. Okay, so yes, we should have used a diagram in question A. The link between PD and TR are not explained clearly only in the conclusion. And yes, examples are needed. Yes, I would have appreciated perhaps examples with some numbers. Okay, why not using numbers? You can just pick figures, and in one case where the demand is elastic, in another case where it's inelastic, and just to show what's going to be the consequence on total revenue. Okay, would anyone else like to add something before we have a closer look at this answer? let's just focus on answer of part A for now. Is it okay? Yes? All right, so let's go. So again, that's a keyword, economics. Again, I don't care when there are mistakes for words that are not specific to economics, but well, not being able to write economics or not understanding the difference between economy and economics, that's a problem for me. Price elasticity of demand, so we should define the acronym PED, so then we can just use PED later. Is a measure of the responsiveness of demand to a change in price. Yes, so if we want to be even more precise, it should be quantity demanded rather than demand, but okay, it's acceptable to a change in price. It is calculated, by using the following formula. Percentage change, or same thing, that's a mistake that I really don't like. Quantity demand, no, it's quantity demanded. Very common mistake, and it's not okay because that's a keyword over percentage change in price. So it's a good start, even though there are like tiny mistakes, because we have a written definition of the PED and we also have the formula. So that's actually pretty good. Then there are 5 types of PED. Well, it's not really 5 types. Okay, it's the PED can have I don't know, different values perhaps. It's not really different types. And also before we talk about the value of the PED, I would have added something about the sign of the PED. Okay, just to say that it is negative. Because of the law of demand. And to talk about the law of demand, let's say that, yeah, if you cut the price, the quantity demanded rises, and because of that, the PED is going to be negative. Okay, but we usually work with the absolute value, of course. So, okay, so there are 5 possible ranges or values of the PED. Honestly, I don't think it's very useful to talk about the 5 possible cases, especially I don't think it's useful to talk about a perfectly elastic demand curve. And okay, why not talking about, and again, I don't think it is useful to talk about the perfectly inelastic demand curve. For this particular essay question that is about the relationship between the PED and the total revenue, if I had to write the essay question myself, I would have focused on 3 cases: PED greater than 1, PED smaller than 1, and PED equal 1. So price elastic, price inelastic, and unit price elastic. I think it's enough. I really don't see there is not much we could add by considering the 2 other cases where the demand is perfectly price elastic. So I would actually I don't think this is not very useful. Okay, now, however, when the PED, so it's in absolute value, if we want to be precise, is smaller than 1, which is inelastic. What is? Same thing. Okay, so instead, we should say then demand is, and we should not only say inelastic, we should say price inelastic, okay? Because if it is the YED that is smaller than 1, it is income inelastic. So we don't just say inelastic or inelastic. It has to be more specific: price elastic or price inelastic. Okay, I would just say that instead. Then demand is price elastic. When the PED, okay, similarly, when PED is greater than 1, so again, if you really want to be precise, but it's no big deal, you can just say the absolute value, same thing, which is elastic demand. I don't really like that. Then demand is price elastic. Okay, but you see that here it would have been, we could have used examples here, but if I had to use examples, I would keep my examples for later when illustrating the impact of a change in price on the total revenue. So far, so good. When the PED is equal to 0, the demand remains unchanged when price rises, which is perfectly price inelastic. Okay, yes, it's true. But again, for this particular essay question, I would have chosen to leave it aside. I don't think it helps. 3 cases is enough. Finally, when the PED is equal to 1, So same thing, then demand is, so there are several ways you can say that. Unitary elasticity. So okay, you could say that unitary price elasticity of demand. Okay, why not? The essay could start like this to consider to introduce the three possible cases: price elastic, price inelastic, unit price elastic, and then later to talk about the total revenue. I would have structured my essay differently. I would have introduced the total revenue first, and then I would have taken one case after the other, and I would have immediately considered the impact on the total revenue when there is a change in price, okay? That's not the only possible way to structure the essay, but I think it would have been more coherent and easier to follow. Okay, now when demand is, again, it should always say price inelastic. A rise in price will cause a rise in revenue. Okay, so there are two mistakes here. First mistake is that it should really say total revenue, not just revenue, because you know that you could have average revenue, you can have marginal revenue. And the second big mistake is that there is no definition. There is no definition of what we mean by total revenue. So yeah, that's a big problem. And a fall in price will cause a fall in, so same thing, total revenue. So it's a good statement. The statement is correct. The relationship is fine. But again, there is no explanation. Okay, so we have a good, correct statement. Oops, sorry, I went a bit too far. It's the statement is fine, but no analysis. Why? And no example. I would use figures. If the price rises from, let's say, 10 to 20, and the quantity demanded falls from 100 to 80, and then you show that, okay, TR increases. So I would use figures. Yeah. Okay, so then similarly, if demand is same thing, price elastic. Price and revenue move, so same thing, should be total revenue move in opposite directions. Okay, yeah, but it should be more clear. Just to say, okay, so then if we rise the price, the total revenue will fall, and if we decrease the price, the total revenue will rise. For this type of analysis, this is where you can use and vice versa. Okay, this would be an appropriate use of and vice versa. So for example, when demand is price elastic, if the price, when the price rises, the total revenue will fall, and vice versa. So you don't have to write, and if the price falls, the total revenue will increase. Okay, so it's fine to just use and vice versa. Okay, so you see, move in opposite direction. Yeah, but it should be more explicit. Should be more explicit than just say move in opposite direction. And again, I'm not going to write it again, but no analysis, no examples. These are statements, but they are not supported by any diagram, any analysis, or any example. So that's very superficial. Okay, however, so that's the last, it's not really however, it should be finally, because we have initially, so finally, when the price increases or decreases, the total revenue will remain unchanged. If demand is of unitary elasticity. Okay, so same thing. Okay, here we have total revenue. Okay, so that's better, but we still don't have a definition. And again, these are mostly statements that are not explained. There is no analysis, there is no example, there is no diagram. So it's okay, but it's very superficial, and the student has not clearly demonstrated application and analysis skills. Okay. All right, so at that stage, you see that there is a lot of things that are missing. Okay, let's have a look at the last paragraph. Discovering that demand for its product is elastic would usually indicate that to affirm that close substitutes are available. Okay, it's a good point. It's true. It can make the firm reluctant to raise its price as it will expect to lose a significant proportion of its sales. Okay, so this is very good. To me, that's extremely relevant, because the essay question is, how can it help businesses to assess the impact of price change upon their total revenue? And that is very good. You see that, yes, it relates the fact that demand is elastic to one determinant of the price elasticity of demand in a proper way. And there is a clear analysis of what is the consequence for the business. The business will be reluctant to raise the price. So I like this, the beginning of this paragraph very much. However, lower price, okay, that's not so clear. However, lower price, what does it mean? It's not a correct sentence, right? It may be able to capture more of the market. So instead, it should be, however, if the demand is price elastic, the firm could capture more of the market by decreasing the price. So it's not very clear. We should rephrase it and essentially say that when the demand is price elastic, lowering the price would allow the business to increase its market share substantially, and to increase its total revenue. So that's something that should be made a bit more clear. So it lacks clarity for this one. Firms may try to make their products seem unique through, for instance, advertising or has brand names. If it is successful, this would make demand more inelastic and give firms greater market power. Okay, it is a good point, but that's a bit messy, right? It seems like it's a different point. It's a different argument, and it's slightly off topic. Because the essay question is not about how a business can make the demand more price inelastic. It's about how knowledge of the PD can have influences on their decisions. So this last sentence is actually correct, but it's to me, it's mostly off topic, because it's about how a business can reduce the elasticity of demand. And that's not what the essay question is about. So I like the first part of the paragraph, but I'm not convinced by the last part. I think it's off topic. And let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, the PED for a good, so knowledge of the PED, so, and it's in conclusion, not in conclude, knowledge of the price elasticity of demand, and we could simply write PED to save time, for a good can help businesses to assess the impact of price changes on their total revenue, which depends on whether it's elastic or inelastic. Okay, comment number one, for part A, it's not necessary to conclude. It's not going to make you lose marks, but usually I don't advise my students to write a conclusion, because usually if you look at the mark schemes, there are no points awarded for conclusion in part A. So usually a conclusion is not needed, because you just explain something. So if you conclude, you are simply going to repeat yourself. So conclusion is not needed in part A. Conclusion is important in part B because it requires an evaluation. So you need a conclusion to summarize, to compare the relative weight of your parts. Okay, part one, part two. But in part A, it's not extremely useful. And you see that the student in this conclusion, there is nothing very useful. There is nothing useful in this conclusion. And I can tell you that there will be no points awarded for this conclusion. Okay. Overall, so there are some good things. There is a good definition of the PED. The formula is okay. The three price elastic, price inelastic, unit elastic has been identified properly. The relationship between PED and total revenue has been stated properly. Okay. there is a good understanding of how knowledge of the PD can benefit businesses. So there are some good things in this essay. However, the analysis of why, well, a more detailed analysis of the relationship between PED and total revenue is missing. They are just statements which are not explained. There are no examples, none. So there is no application at all. Of course, we don't need to evaluate because this is part A. So analysis is superficial. There is no application whatsoever. There is no diagram used, whereas of course a diagram could have been used. So that's just an average answer for me. So same thing. Am I going to be cruel when telling you that I would probably give definitely no more than 5, probably a 5, 4.5 or 5. Yeah, again, if we could give half marks. Yeah, am I cruel? I think it's fair, honestly. Yeah, probably 5. I would give 5 for that. Would you like to add anything about this this work, this sample? Did I forget anything? Would you have given another grade to that student?
No, I'm okay with that, Professor. You have done like very detailed forensics, and all the points have been discussed, especially the revenue point.
Okay, thank you, Shui. Would anyone else like to add something? You can just type the grade that you would have given to the student, but I think anything above 5 is way too generous. Anything below 4 is too tough. 4, yeah, 4 is a bit tough, I think. 5 is probably, I would be happy with the 5, especially because I like the the beginning of this paragraph. I think it's good. If this paragraph was missing, then I would have given 4, but this paragraph has pushed the grade a bit upward. Okay, let's have a look at part B. Actually, yeah, I don't know if it's part B, but that's at least a 12 mark essay question. So that's a part B for AS economics. Since the demand for demerit goods such as cigarettes is price inelastic, must be the same essay. A tax on the product is a waste of time. I don't know whether it says time really. Well, a waste of time means that it's not effective, right? What is needed is better awareness amongst consumers of the negative effects of smoking cigarettes. Discuss this view. Okay. Who would like to share some thoughts about part B? What did you like about part B, and what do you think could have been improved in part B? Please don't let me do all the work. Help me. It's been a long week.
Yeah, Professor, the first thing which actually caught my eye while I was reading back then, the question is about like demerit goods and demand and like everything, but the answer starts from the taxation. Well, you can say that since the second part of the question is about like taxes also, but I was more happy if the question was started from the demerit goods that were, and then, from demerit goods, they can then shift their focus towards the taxation. So that was the first thing which actually caught my eye, like you can say instantly.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a weird structure to start the essay talking about taxes. I agree, because a tax is in that essay, a tax is an instrument to correct the market failure caused by demerit goods. So it makes much more sense to start talking about demerit goods and explaining why they make the market fail, and then to introduce taxation, to talk about taxes and how we can use them to fix demerit goods. So I agree that the structure is a bit awkward.
Yeah, yeah. And the second thing, you know, when it starts talking about the thing, this, wait, I lost my, yeah. Then secondly, when it starts talking about this like information failure thing, right? And then, you know, all of a sudden the shifts like moves away. Like, I don't think so that the student has succeeded, kept his focus right on, you know, what is asking in the question actually. So this was the also thing which which caught my eye. And then like he has talked about a lot of things in the question, but in the conclusion, if so, it's like just 2 or 3 lines, and that also doesn't makes any sense to me. Yeah, that's my analysis.
Thank you, Shoaib. Iman, in the chat box, you say direct tax part may be irrelevant too. Yes, I agree. When we talk about imposing taxes on the product, then we talk about specific indirect taxes. So I don't really see why it's not incorrect. Okay, clearly the student here has talked about direct taxes, but it's not useful. Okay, so yeah, that talking about direct taxes, this part, it is not quite useful. Okay, it's to me it's off topic. We clearly, because the essay question is a tax on the product, it means that we are focusing on indirect taxes. So I don't really see what's the point of talking about direct taxes here. Okay, it's not such a big deal. It's just one sentence. It's not like if the entire paragraph was off topic, but I would have directly focused on indirect taxes. Yeah. Would anyone else like to add something about this answer? Are we good? Yeah. All right. Are you ready for the forensic analysis? And actually, just to let you know, because I see it's already 11:41, I think there is a sample 3 is the same essay question, but just an answer that was provided by another student. So I think we're going to skip this one because we've already done one together. Well, you can have a look at it, and you can send me the feedback that you would have given to that student. So then in private, I can give you my opinion. So then we can just have a look at sample 4. Okay, so the last one, the last sample together, which is an A2 essay question about essentially market structures. Okay, so we can finish with an A2 essay question. Okay, so let's just let's have a look at this this answer, and let's start with the forensic analysis. Okay, in the economy, okay, there are 2 types of tax. Okay, it's not very useful to define tax because well, everybody knows what a tax is. So yeah, we don't. Okay, it's a keyword, yes, but I think it's fine if we don't define it. Okay, so direct tax and indirect tax. So I think defining indirect tax is useful because, of course, it is when we talk about imposing a tax on a demerit good, this is what we have in mind. So this part here is interesting. The indirect tax is a tax that is levied on goods and services, yes, and collected for the government by retailers and local government bodies. Okay, it's a very comprehensive and precise definition of what an indirect tax is. But again, I just think that it's not a very good idea to start with this definition of what an indirect tax is. Okay, now, if the demerit good is price inelastic, well, here you have a huge problem. You don't have a definition, at least here, maybe later, but okay, you have a keyword that is used, but you don't have any definition of what we mean by a demerit good. And this, it's not like if we had given the definition in part A. Part A was not about demerit goods. On the other hand, in part A, we already talked about price elasticity. So we don't need to define the PED again, to explain again what it means for demand to be price elastic or price inelastic. We don't need to do that, yeah. But demerit good, well, that's the most important keyword that needed to be defined precisely to explain why it makes the market fail, to use examples. So it seems like a very important part of the answer has been overlooked, or maybe it will simply come later, but too late. Okay, so, but let's just read what the student has written. So if the demerit good is price inelastic, okay, the imposition of an indirect tax will not significantly reduce its consumption because, okay, I would actually stop the sentence here. Remember, one sentence, we should say one thing. So that's the statement. It's a good statement. And then I can start with the explanation. This is because when, and we don't say the price is inelastic, when demand is price inelastic and there is an indirect tax on the product, the price rises, the total revenue rises as well. But that's not the point, right? That's not the point. The point here is no longer about total revenue. Okay, that's not the point. What we should have said instead is that if demand is price inelastic, the introduction of a tax will lead to an increase in price. But because the demand is price elastic, the quantity demanded will not decrease a lot. Okay, so that's the analysis does not explain the point that was stated. The point is, if you introduce the tax, it's not going to reduce consumption a lot. So it's really about the quantity demanded. It's not about total revenue. Okay, so that's a bad analysis. Okay, similarity, no, that's similarly. So it's the same thing, spelling mistake here. Similarly, when there is no indirect tax, okay, I'm a bit puzzled, we'll see. The price decreases, so the total, okay, that doesn't make sense. It's just unrelated. We don't care about TR, unrelated. We care about the relationship here. The relationship is about essentially the introduction of a tax that has an influence on the price, that has an influence on the quantity demanded. Okay, that's it. And the idea is that if we introduce a tax, the price will rise and the quantity demanded will fall. Yes, but by what proportion? Will the quantity demanded fall by more or less than the price as a percentage change, of course. So that's a poor analysis. That does not explain what was stated before. Therefore, it is not significantly reduced consumption. Okay, yes, that's the idea, but instead the analysis could have been much easier. Okay, for a given tax, the price will increase by a certain amount, but of course, if demand is inelastic, the quantity demanded will not increase significantly. That's it. Okay. Then, so yeah, this answer doesn't look very good. The information failure. So this is what we should have at the beginning when we define very good. What information failure? Okay, this is something that should have been explained before. It comes too late. The information failure will cause consumers to buy cigarettes. No, yes, it's not only because of information failure. It's not the problem is that it's not that they buy cigarettes. That the problem is that they demand an excessive quantity of cigarettes. So the demand is higher than what it would be if they had perfect information. So you have to compare perfect information versus imperfect information. And this should have been, more information should have been given about this information failure the information is missing? Well, because the student has not even defined what a demerit good is. So yeah, this doesn't look very good so far. Okay, so this information fell, and it's not will cause consumers to buy too much cigarette, which is when people do not have full or complete information. So that sentence is a bit weird because it defines. So it starts with information failure, then it goes. It describes the consequence, and then it defines the original word, information failure. Okay, so instead we should have this information failure, open bracket, when people do not have full or complete information, just here, and then people will consume too many cigarettes. Okay, but then perhaps it would have been interesting to be more specific about what type of information failure do consumers face about cigarettes. Okay, perhaps it's later. So let's see. The government can take some, and you see, sorry, at that stage, same thing, we don't have any diagram. We could have a diagram that shows why the market fails, why there will be an excessive quantity of cigarettes being consumed due to an information failure on the side of consumers, on the part of consumers. So same thing, diagram, and there is no mention of market failure. So these are keywords that are missing, of course. Okay, so the government can take some, and there is no explanation. You see the student is moving on and talking about advertisement, but there is no clear explanation on how a tax, what would be the impact of a tax on this market. Okay, the student should have said that, okay, if we introduce a tax, then the supply will decrease, okay, will shift upward if we want to be precise. And as a result, the equilibrium quantity will fall. This process, the impact of an indirect tax within a market has not even been explained. So that's an important part that is missing. Okay, you see that here clearly there should be a new paragraph because the student is starting to talk about something new, to talk about advertisement now. So that's something new. Using a new paragraph can help the reader understand that, okay, now we are about to start something new. All right. I'm not writing all possible comments because there are too many things that could be said for this answer. The government can take some advertisement, so maybe a broadcast or take, I don't know, take is not very precise, can use advertising to improve consumers' awareness of the negative effects of smoking cigarettes. Okay, yes, it's true. This is a method to decrease the demand. Yes, it's true, or at least to close the information gap, or to address. Okay, let's just say it's fine to decrease demand. Why not? Moreover, but you see, it's not very specific. It would be great to give, okay, what are the negative effects of smoking? Of course, it's obvious, but remember that students have to demonstrate application. So it would be interesting to be more specific. What are they? What are those negative effects of smoking? What type of advertisement? Okay, they could be in schools, especially because these are mostly teenagers who start smoking. So there could be some advertisement campaigns in public schools. Could be information printed on the cigarette packages. Could be TV ads. You got to be specific if you want to earn application marks. Okay, give examples of advertisements. Give examples and be specific, of course. And then, okay, so the last part, so moreover, so same thing, there should be a new paragraph because clearly here we start something new. So you see, it's a bit weird because we talk about indirect taxes, then advertisement, then direct taxes. So If I had to do it myself, if I believe that talking about direct taxes was relevant, I would have combined direct and indirect taxes together. I would not put advertisement in between. Okay, so then I don't, that's not so relevant. I understand the idea, but yeah, not so relevant. Why? It's true that if you reduce, if you increase income tax, for example, not really for businesses, by the way, mostly for consumers. Yeah, I don't even know why. Okay, so that's absolutely not relevant. I thought the student was going to talk about income tax for consumers, but that's not even the case. It's like corporate tax for businesses. So, okay, this might reduce their profit, so they would reduce the demand. Do firms demand cigarettes? So that doesn't make any sense. On the other hand, you could say that, okay, if we increase income tax, consumers have less income and therefore they buy less cigarettes. Yes, but that doesn't really fix the problem. When we talk about the demerit good, it's not a problem of people are too rich, so they buy too much. The problem of demerit good is that people don't have a good information, so they buy too much. So yeah, it's true that people will buy less cigarettes if they have less income, but they will still suffer from an information failure, and so you will still have a market failure. Who knows, maybe your deadweight loss is going to be smaller, but you will definitely still have a deadweight loss. So talking about how you can use direct taxes to fix the problem is not relevant. And here, that's even less relevant because the student has chosen to focus on direct taxes imposed on businesses. So I really don't see how this could help reducing this market failure. Okay. Besides, the demand for demerit goods needs to be reduced. Okay, but it's not really besides, that's what we are trying to do since the beginning. This could be done by using the revenue gain from an indirect tax to fund an awareness campaign. Okay, true. It's actually a pretty good point. I like this point because you see that it connects the two possible instruments. Instead of saying something like, oh, we have to use one or the other, the student is essentially saying you can actually use a combination of both. You can impose a tax, and it should be a tax perhaps on cigarettes. And with the revenue that you collect from this tax, you can fund an awareness campaign. So it's actually something that it's a very good point that I would reward. This will result in the demand curve for cigarettes shifting to the left. Okay, so a decrease, but you see that there is still no diagram. It would have been useful to use at least one diagram for this answer. Okay. However, the demand for cigarettes is price elastic. Okay, you see the structure of the essay is really bad. It's just so hard to follow the different steps. So yeah, like the structure, let me write this, the structure should be how can I, what adjective can I use? It should be more coherent. I don't know, it's just, you see, it's really hard to follow. Like we have the demand for cigarettes is price elastic, but we already had something like that here before, so not easy to follow the logic of the student. So okay, so however, the demand for cigarettes is price elastic, and the correct level of taxation is extremely difficult for a government. Why? Is it because the demand is price elastic, or is it because the government doesn't have a good information? So same thing here, you have a statement, okay, which actually may be valid. It may be very difficult to set the correct level of taxation, but no explanation. No explanation. Why is it difficult for the government to know the correct level of taxation? And how does this relate to the fact that the demand is price inelastic? Okay, linked to the PED, I don't really see how it is relevant here. Okay, and you should not start a sentence by and. It should be something like besides instead. Besides. The poor. Do not write the poor replaced by low-income household. That sounds more professional, more politically correct too. Low-income households will suffer proportionally more than the rich, as indirect taxes are regressive. Okay, that's a very good point. Very interesting to talk about that, because it will allow us to introduce the trade-off between efficiency and we reduce the deadweight loss, we improve resource allocation and equity, fairness. So it's very good. And there is and there is a good definition of what we mean by regressive tax. So the second half of the answer is much better than the first half. Greater proportion of the poor's income than they do of the rich. Thus widening, income inequality. Not really, because it doesn't affect income. The fact that you take more from the rich doesn't really increase inequality. Instead of saying something like widening inequality, you could say something like thus, and thus can be considered to be inequitable. It doesn't have to do with income inequality. It doesn't change your income. It essentially changes your purchasing power. So I would just say it can be considered to be inequitable. So yes, there is a trade-off between efficiency and equity. It's a very good point here that can be made, and a good evaluative comment. Therefore, the taxation is not a waste of time. And actually, I don't really know why they used time in the essay question. Maybe just to misguide students, because it will reduce smoking to some extent. Okay. But you see the therefore here does not to be connected to what comes before. So again, the structure is quite bad. It has nothing to, it's just like a conclusion. It's very confusing. Okay, it will reduce smoking to some extent, yes. And like advertising, it needs long time to prepare and needs cost to spend. Okay, yes, long time to prepare. It's actually questionable. You don't need 10 years to prepare an advertisement, so it's relative. And it's cost to spend. Yes, okay, so you could definitely talk about the opportunity cost of an advertisement campaign, just to use another keyword rather than just saying cost. It would have been the opportunity to talk about the opportunity cost, just to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. Okay, to conclude, a tax on the product is not a waste of time. So you see, it seems like the student is repeating himself. It's almost the same sentence. So that's a waste. That is a waste of time for the student, because it can reduce smoking. You see, those two paragraphs are almost the same, because it can reduce smoking in the short time, okay, and does not need extract money to supply. Oh, you mean it's not so clear, extract money, so it doesn't have an opportunity cost. Is that it? But it has other limitations. You see that there are many limitations of taxation that have been overlooked. Most have been overlooked. Okay, so it's actually a difficult essay or difficult answer to grade because it is very inconsistent. There are very good things and there are very bad things. But overall, you see that the biggest issue is the structure. It is very bad. The structure is very difficult to follow. The second biggest problem, or maybe the first biggest problem, is that you don't have a definition of demerit good. You don't have any explanation on how it makes the market fail. You don't have any diagram to support this explanation. The application is very weak. You don't have any clear example of what advertisements can be used, what are the negative effects of smoking, and therefore why cigarettes are indeed a demerit good. So these are really the negative parts of the essay. There are quite a few statements that are not explained. It's also a big issue. But there are also some good things. Not many, but there are some good things. So for example, about, where is it? Yeah, the fact that we can actually combine the two instruments, advertisement and taxation, to use tax revenue to finance advertisement. It's a very good point. And the trade-off between efficiency and equity, the fact that indirect taxes are regressive, it's a good evaluative comment as well. But overall, this is not a very good answer. So again, out of 13, how much would I give? It's difficult. difficult. I'm hesitating. Sorry. Sorry. Hesitating between 6 and 7. It's not amazing.
I think without the
definition of
diagram, 6 marks are enough. I think so.
But there are a few interesting evaluative comments about the combination of the two, but there are not many limit. There is a mention of opportunity cost. So that's also one possible limitation of advertisement. Yeah, okay. Let's just say 6 or 7, because there are some good things, but overall there are too many big issues: structure, no definition of demerit good, no diagram, not a good. Okay, please allow me to award half marks, and I give 6.5. Okay, and everybody is happy. So yeah, I think 6.5 would be fair. Okay, so overall, what did I give? 6.5 for part B. What did I say for part? I think I said 5, right? For part A, so it would be 11.5. Between 11 and 12 for overall for this essay. Okay. All right. Any question? Anything you want to add about this sample? Are we good?
Yes, I'm good, Professor. After this forensic analysis.
I should change job. Yeah, I should work in forensics. Okay,
Yeah.
let me save it. I'm going to send you this document with the annotations as well. Let's have
thank you very much.
Let's have a quick look at the last one, because I know it's already quite late, and I think everybody is quite hungry. And this one is rather long. So how about I just start right away? And if you want to add something, oh, and I see that there are already a few comments you see on these documents, fewer comments than here, but there are a few comments. So let's do it together. And if you feel like I am missing anything, or if you want to add anything, you can type in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and talk to me directly. So this one is an A2 essay question about market structure, analyze and discuss. So it's a 13, it's a part B essay question. So that, of course, requires, you see the keyword analyze and discuss how the market price and quantity supplied might change if a profit maximizing firm in a perfectly competitive market were able to achieve a monopoly status in that market. Okay, let's do it. There are, so of course we should start by describing what we mean by a perfectly competitive market. There are 5 assumptions. Yes, actually 5 assumptions is perhaps almost too many. But let's see what, let me just make my pen a bit thicker. Up, okay. 5, okay, let's see. Of a perfectly competitive market. Okay, so first, there is a large number of firms. Yes, okay, true. Many firms, many sellers, actually, and facing many buyers. It's also important. Facing, so many sellers and many buyers. It means that firms act independently of each other, and the actions of each firm, of each one, does not affect the actions of another. Okay, it's very good. It's absolutely, there is no strategic independence between those businesses. So that's why we don't talk about game theory. Okay, that's also why they are price taker. Absolutely. It's just maybe too detailed. You know, I'm afraid that if you give this amount of detail, I'm afraid that you might not have time to write other things. So it's absolutely true, but I would keep it more simple. I would just say many firms facing many buyers, and then I move on. But it's absolutely correct. Second, firms or sellers. I like to use sellers rather than firms because not all sellers are firms, but it's okay. Firms produce homogeneous products, which means, okay, it is not possible to distinguish the product of one producer from that of another. Okay, very good. Also very detailed, almost too detailed. I would simply say that all businesses sell an identical product. I would simply say that. So price is the only selection criterion. This is what matters. And you see the problem I sometimes have when students write on every line. I don't have much space to write comments. What matters, why it is important that firms sell all the same product, is that for consumers, price is the only selection criterion. So there is nothing else that matters, the only selection criterion. Okay. Third, there is free entry and exit. Yes, careful, because sometimes students, they write exist. No, exit. In other words, there are no barriers to entry and exit from the industry. Okay, very good. Fourth, there is perfect information, which means that all firms and all consumers have complete information regarding products, prices, resources, and method of production. Okay, so far it's excellent. But again, what would worry me is that it's almost too detailed, and time-wise, I would be afraid that this introduction is too long and would not allow the student to talk about all important concepts. But it's excellent. Fifth, there is a perfect resource mobility, which means that the resources can easily and without any cost be transferred from one, it's not really from one firm to the other, well, it could be, but even from one industry to the other also. It's not only within the industry, so it's also outside of the market. Okay, it's not only mobility within the market, it's also mobility outside. Resources can freely enter and exit. So basically, when we say a perfect resource mobility, it means that there is no barriers to entry or exit for resources, not for producers, but for resources, for workers, for capital equipment, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and this means that the supply of each factor of production is perfectly price elastic. And that's why we have a constant cost industry in the most standard model of perfect competition. But that's a bit beyond the syllabus. Usually, I don't advise my student to include this assumption. I think it's fine if we just focus on the first 4. Yes, and there is something missing. I would add that because of that, firms are price taker. This is a keyword. It's not an additional assumption. It is actually the consequence, as the teacher here wrote, compare the assumption and put them together. When you put them together, you can conclude that, yes, that means that each firm in perfect competition is price taker. Okay, when it comes to the monopoly, there are 3 assumptions. Okay, 3, I don't really like assumptions. I like characteristics better than assumptions. Same thing for perfect competition. But again, it's a detail. First, there is a single seller or dominant firm in the market. Okay, that we call the monopolist. Okay, it has a name, the monopolist. In the real world, the monopolistic industry may consist of one firm that dominates the market with a large market share. Yes, it's true. It's true, but again, this essay question is mostly focuses on the theoretical model of monopoly. So yeah, this sentence is absolutely correct. In practice, when we talk about a monopoly, we have several sellers usually, but we have one or two big ones, or one that dominates everybody else. Yes, otherwise it would be oligopoly. Okay, second, there are no close substitutes. Yes, no close substitutes, absolutely. If substitute goods or if substitutes existed, then consumers could easily switch to buying another one, okay, in which case there would be no longer a monopoly for the good in question, or at least the market power of the monopolist would be greatly diminished, okay. There would not be, so no close substitute means that there is no indirect competition. No indirect competition. The fact there is a single firm means that there is no direct competition because I'm the only one in the market. Okay, so yes, no close substitute. Don't forget this one. Sometimes students, they forget the absence of close substitutes. Blah blah blah. But you see, it's good, but it's long. I'm a bit afraid. If it's a homework, it's fine, because if you do that as a piece of homework, you have enough time. But if you do that for an exam, it seems a bit too detailed. Okay. Third, no significant barriers to entry. There are significant barriers to entry, which means no potential competition. That's a good way to summarize those three characteristics. No direct, no indirect, no potential competition. The monopolist owes its dominance in the market and the absence of competitor firm, partly to the inability of the firms to enter the industry. Okay, so these two paragraphs are excellent. The problem is that they only demonstrate knowledge and understanding. And you see that I don't know how many words we have. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 22 lines. If we say, so we have probably around 160 words just for that. So it seems too much, unless you have a student who has the ability to write extremely fast, but I'm afraid that, I don't know if this is most likely, I guess this is a piece of homework, not something done in an exam. And I don't think that student would be able to write such a long and clear essay within 45 minutes. So we also have to take this into account when assigning homework. We can give a maximum number of words or pages, or like to advise them to use 45 minutes top, because otherwise they might not practice time management. Okay, but it's very good, just too long in my opinion. Then marginal costs. Okay, so the problem here is that, yes, there is this definition, but we don't really understand why a definition here. Remember that definitions should be given when we need the keyword. So here we have definition of MC. Okay, it's correct. We have the definition of MR. It's correct. But we don't really understand why are those definitions given here? Why are these definitions given here? It's better to integrate the definitions when you need the keyword. So, for example, I would have said instead the output, or we can be even more precise, the profit maximizing output is where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. Okay, and then once you have mentioned those two keywords the first time, it is a good time to define those keywords. Okay, its aim is profit maximization. This is because and then there is an explanation of the profit maximizing rule. Okay, so we have the two cases. If MR is less than MC, if MR is greater than MC. Okay, that's good, but again, this seems like this is perhaps not essential for this essay question. And again, of course, if that student has spent time explaining the profit maximizing output rule, which is absolutely correct, but I would be scared about the time left to really answer the essay question, because the essay question is not about how do firms maximize profit, even though the profit maximizing rule is important to that essay question. So again, it's a trade-off, but the explanation is relatively concise, and of course it is accurate here. Okay, then we have a new paragraph, so it's good for the presentation. I think we agree that the presentation of this essay is pretty good. The handwriting is very clear. No erasures at all. I can't find any erasure, so it's very good. Something I don't really like about the presentation, and I talked about this 2 days ago, is the fact that you see that text is being wrapped around that diagram. And you know that I don't think it's a very good practice in terms of presentation. The diagram should be centered, should be large enough. Nothing should be written besides it. There should also be a number there, if possible, a title. I would like to see a title. So yeah, apart from that, the diagram looks good. Okay, demand is a marginal benefit. Okay, everything has been labeled. Yes, everything is labeled. So yeah, the diagram actually looks pretty good. So it's fine, but I think there's no text should be wrapped around it. Let's assume that the marginal costs are the same, whether in perfect competition or in monopoly. It's true that this is the assumption that we make. Yes, I think this student is probably following my PPTs, because this is something that I do mention in my PPTs, but I don't think it's mentioned in textbooks. But yes, it's true. In the diagram, it shows the long run equilibrium position. What makes it long run? Nothing makes it long run here. We can just say the equilibrium positions of what? There are several positions of what? Of monopoly and perfect competition. Should be clear. In a perfectly competitive market, supply is equal to MC. Well, you could argue that the MC is the supply curve in perfect competition. Okay. If the marginal costs are the same that in perfect competition, then the marginal cost of the monopolist is the same as the market supply curve in perfect competition. So yeah, so then that makes it easy to justify that this is the equilibrium in perfect competition, where supply is equal to a demand. So yeah, so the supply curve is equal to the marginal cost. Okay, so we write it down. So the equilibrium in perfect competition is just supply is equal to demand. So yes, we have a clear equilibrium. So here the diagram, there is a very good comment. Okay, the diagram is explained very clearly, and it's a very good practice. Okay, and this is determined by the intersection of market demand and market supply curve. Yes, absolutely, but that we have here. Since all firms are price taker, MR is equal to PC. Okay, but why does it matter? I'm not too sure. However, in a monopoly, MR, okay, yes, all right, why not? It demonstrates that the students understand that depending on whether a business is price maker or price taker, this will have different consequences regarding the shape of the marginal revenue curve. Yes. And okay, profit maximizing. Okay. I'm not saying too much. I'm moving much faster, not because I am hungry, but truly because this is good. Okay, that's very good. As I have repeated multiple times, it's almost too long. But it's very good. It's a very clear explanation and a very clear analysis. So perfect. And now comes the comparison. Very good. So since QM is less than, I'm here. Since QM is less than QPC, the industry under monopoly produces a smaller quantity of output than the industry under perfect competition. Absolutely. And since PM is greater than PC, the monopoly sells output at a higher price than, okay. Well, I have nothing to add. This is perfect. This is really, really good. at least goes against consumers' interest, at least in terms of prices. There might be other benefits. So really, so far, this is an outstanding essay. This is extremely solid, very, very good. There are, of course, a few things, a few details that could be improved, but it looks very, very good. However, okay, I like these transitional words. Now I know that we are about to start looking at something else. However, there may be a lower marginal cost in a monopoly. Okay, that's a good statement. You see, that's the statement. This is because that's the explanation. So very good structure of the argument. This is because economies of scale lead to a falling average cost over a large range of output. Okay, and firm scales. Okay, so perhaps this could have been explained more clearly. Okay, something like this is because a monopolist is going to produce a larger output than a perfectly competitive firm. And if there are substantial economies of scale within that industry, then the monopolist will be able to produce at a lower average total cost. Okay, extensive economies of scale are a major argument in favor of large firms that can achieve lower costs as they grow in size. Okay, very good. Then, of course, we have the second diagram, and I have the same comment about the fact that diagrams should not be wrapped, text should not be wrapped around diagrams. It's just about the presentation. It's actually quite, I don't think it's useful to use a diagram to illustrate economies of scale, or probably not this, this diagram. I know that there is one textbook that uses this diagram, but I don't really like it. So I would not use this diagram. I would not use this diagram. To illustrate the argument on economies of scale. Instead, I would use another diagram. You probably remember it from my PPT, where I simply have the quantity, the cost, and I show a longer and average total cost. And I just show that, okay, if we have 10 firms producing 10 units, the overall cost is going to be much larger than if you have only one firm producing 100 units. Okay, so if you have like 10 firms producing 10 units at $10 each, it's going to cost you $1,000 in total. If you have one firm producing 100 units at $2, it only costs you $200. So that's just one way to illustrate that, yeah, it's more cost efficient to have one firm producing rather than many. I think it's easier to understand than this diagram. Okay, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of this diagram. I know where it comes from, but I think it's not clear enough. But that's not the student's fault. Okay, so when a monopoly can achieve substantial economies of scale, it is even possible that its lower average cost, let's be precise, its lower average cost will permit price and output levels that approach those of perfectly competitive industry, and who knows, approach or maybe even exceed. It's possible. A monopolist can even produce more if you have very substantial economies of scale. Perfectly competitive firms, okay, because of their small size, are unable to achieve economies of scale. This is shown in the diagram where QM and PM are the output and price of the standard monopolist. Okay. So that's very good. Okay, I'm not going to read every single sentence. It is extremely good. But again, that's quite detailed, perhaps too detailed. And you see that the problem is that I feel like we are reaching the end of the essay, pretty close. And there are other points that could have been made and that have been overlooked. So let me just finish this point about economies of scale, but look at that. Look at how long, look at this paragraph. There are probably over 200 words just on economies of scale, which is definitely a key point of that essay question, but I think it would have been smarter to spend less time talking about economies of scale to save more time and talk about other points. I'll just give you a few more ideas later. Okay, so then we have that. Let me see if there is anything else. It's too detailed. Yeah, so okay, that is very good, but it's too detailed. All right, let's move on. In addition, lower MC can be caused by technical innovations because the profit leads to more ability to finance R&D. So you see that this is something a bit weird. We have over 200 words about economies of scale, and then we have one sentence about this very interesting points. Yeah, perhaps a monopoly can make more profit and therefore has a greater ability to innovate, to introduce process innovation, and to further reduce its cost of production. So that is something that should deserve, this argument deserves to be developed, illustrated. So I'm quite shocked by the contrast between the amount of detail that is given about economies of scale and nothing about research and development, process innovation, and the relationship between profit, financing research and development, achieving process innovation. So that makes the essay a bit unbalanced, and there is a very good explanation of how the equilibrium will form in perfect competition and in monopoly. There is a very good explanation of what these two market structures are, an amazing explanation of the importance of economies of scale, but then there is nothing about, for example, X inefficiencies. There is nothing about, are we talking about a public or a private monopoly? Maybe it's this movement from perfect competition to monopoly is the consequence of a nationalization. So it would have been interesting to talk about public-private monopolies, or to talk about the objectives of the monopolist. Okay, does the monopolist want to maximize profit? Does it have alternative objectives? Do I forget anything? So you see, there are other points that could have been discussed, and I think it would have been better to write shorter paragraphs, less detailed, to allow more time, to save more time to talk about additional, to introduce additional ideas, or perhaps even how about price discrimination? To say that, okay, maybe the monopolist, now that it has a market power, can price discriminate. What will be the consequences on output, on price and output? There is no discussion on price discrimination. So, okay, let me read the conclusion and then I will give my final assessment. So as a conclusion, okay, a new paragraph, transitional word, very good. Generally, the products are always have higher prices and less quantity in a monopoly compared with perfectly competitive industry, okay? However, they may be lower prices and more quantity in a monopoly from a significant economy of scale achieved by firms or R&D or technology. So this is not very detailed, but okay. Okay, so overall, this remains a very good answer. There is a very strong knowledge and understanding, even though more concepts could have been introduced within the essay. Application is not amazing because you see that there are few examples. And again, to me, the diagrams, they are not, they cannot be rewarded as application. So I would have liked to see, for example, examples of economies of scale, examples of markets in which we have a strong concentration. If we had price discrimination, we could have used examples. So use R&D and technology, we could have talked about specific innovations. So you see that the essay is very good, but it remains very, very general. So the application is probably one of the weakest part of the essay. The analysis is very strong, probably the strongest part of the essay. A very strong analysis, very detailed, very clear, very coherent. I haven't identified any mistake in the analysis, so it's very strong. And the evaluation is also quite good, even though it could be developed further about what can have an influence on the size of economies of scale, whether even though the monopolies can have more greater ability to innovate, it might lack incentives to innovate due to the absence of competition. So there is some evaluation within that essay, but I would consider that it remains a bit limited. But okay, overall, I'm quite happy with this work, and I would, again, what grade would I give out of 13? I would subtract at least 2 marks for the weak application, maybe 1 mark at least, and probably 10 out of 13. 9.5 or 10. It is very good, but as I said, it is too detailed and not enough concepts have been discussed. Yeah, nothing about X inefficiencies, nothing about price discrimination, nothing about the objectives, nothing about public or private monopoly, no details given on R&D and technology. So there are still quite a few things that are missing. So probably 9.5 would be a good grade. And if I could not give half marks, I would probably give 10. But I find 10 is a bit generous because I think we are quite impressed as teachers when we see this type of essay, because we know, we can definitely see that it has been written by a student who has a very good understanding and is able to do very good analysis. But again, if we put ourselves in the shoes of an examiner, and if we think in terms of assessment criteria, especially if we think in terms of application, there is not much application here, and the evaluation remains quite limited. And again, in terms of knowledge and understanding, the concepts that have been included, there is a clear demonstration of knowledge and understanding, but there are too few concepts being discussed in this essay. Okay, that's my assessment of this work. What do you guys think? Is there anything that we could add about this work? But yeah, overall, that's quite good. That would probably be an A at the end of the day. What would you like to add about this, this work, this final sample that we discussed together? Did I forget anything? Am I again too cruel?
Not cruel, but it's good. I really like your style to do the forensics so, minutely.
Again, this type of essay is a good example of, I think, don't let yourself impressed by this type of essay where students are going to focus on a very narrow part, a very narrow content, and would be very impressive at explaining, analyzing, using diagram. But then don't get, if you are, try to remain objective. Yes, it's very good, but there are so many other things that could have been included in that essay which are missing because too many details have been given. And it's difficult for us to tell whether the student did not have anything else to say or simply that the student was running out of time and did not have enough time to talk about the other concepts. All right, any other questions? Anything else you would like to add? Okay, so how about we conclude this series of workshop? So this has been 5 busy days for you, for me. I truly hope that you, okay, let me turn on my webcam again. Okay, yeah. So I truly hope that these 5 days of workshops have been instructive. Feel free to share the content with your students, of course. That's the purpose of these workshops. Or even with your colleagues, even if they have not registered. I don't mind it. I don't mind it if you give your account or your login credentials to your colleagues or even your students so they can watch the videos and access the documents. As I said, this workshop has already helped me to finance the development of my physics and chemistry website. So you can share the resources with friends and colleagues, students. So yeah, I hope that this is going to be helpful for you, for your students to write better essays and eventually to achieve higher grades for the final examination. Obviously, if I can be of any help in the future to support you, or if you would like us to meet again to do some to cover some other content, so just give me some time to rest, and then in a few weeks, a month, I don't mind meeting again to talk about perhaps some aspects of essay writing that we have overlooked. I think the program we covered over the last 5 days was quite comprehensive. I don't think we overlooked much. I think we took enough time to analyze everything in detail. And yeah, you have access to all the documents, you have access to all the video recordings, and you will always have access to these documents. So if you want to watch this in a few months or even in a few years, everything should remain accessible through the website. Okay, feel free to send me a message if you want to give me some feedback about what you enjoyed about this series of workshop, and also what you think could have been better. So then if we meet again in the future, I can take into account your feedback and improve could be the content or the delivery method of these workshops to be more effective. Okay, let me just have a quick look at the chat box before ending that meeting. Yeah, thanks again for joining these live events. Thank you for your participation. And to those who are watching the video recording, again, I hope that these documents and these videos will be useful for you and for your students. Now it's time for lunch. So I wish everyone a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the week or the rest of your holiday if you like me are lucky enough to have holidays for Chinese New Year. And again, you have my contact information, so feel free to contact me if there is anything I can do for you. The video recording of this last session will be available in a few hours on the website. And that's about it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care of yourselves. I really hope that your students will do well this year, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.